everybody, and welcome to Digital Hospitality. We are going to have a fantastic conversation today. We're talking about childhood clues. Now, this idea for this room came to me when I saw a post on Instagram, and it was a photographer, a brand photographer that I follow, and she just had a picture of herself with her camera. And instead of just saying, I take pictures or something, she put the story of, I stole my mother's camera as a 7-year-old, and she proceeded to tell the story of how she had went and taken pictures, not knowing that later on in life this would be a part of her job. And so today we're going to be talking about, are there any childhood clues that were a hint of something that you do today? And I pulled up a couple of examples of famous people that you may or not know. I know that Steven Spielberg got a hold of his dad's 8mm camera back in the day and would take little snippets of family photos, but it began his cinematography career. William Boeing with aviation, he saw a flying machine in 1909 and knew that that was what he wanted to do. He took flying lessons and started the Boeing company, which is obviously still around. Colonel Sanders was in love with cooking as a kid. And so then he started doing that. Of course, we've got Walt Disney, who loved to draw and tell stories, and think about all of the stories and the drawings that we've seen come from Walt Disney side of things. So for myself, I was thinking of this story. When I was a little kid, my father was an associate pastor at a church in West Palm Beach, Florida. And after the services, he would have to be helping out ministering to people. So he made my sister and I sit on the front row so he could keep an eye on us. And my mom as well. She was running around helping people. And so I would sit there and draw pictures. And my sister she started selling them to people on this particular Sunday. And it was just really funny because in our life, well, after we got done, we got in the car and Mary said, "Hey, can we go get ice cream? I'll pay." And my dad's like, "Where did you get money?" And so we're 7 and 8 years old. And she's like, "Oh, Beffy drew the pictures and I sold them." And then Daddy had a big talk with us about Jesus turning over tables and not doing business in God's house. And so anyway, it was really funny. And he asked us not to do that again. But what's funny is now I draw pictures for people. I create animations and illustrations for my business. And my sister is one of the most fantastic salespeople you've ever met in your life. She could sell ice to Eskimos. That's one of our favorite things. So I'm hoping today to kind of get some stories from you. It's okay if you don't have like a specific story like that. I would love to hear like what hobbies or idiosyncrasies or any core memories that you had as a kid that you might even be able to start to incorporate in what you're doing today. And so I'm going to ask Mike to start bringing people up on stage, and we'll get started here in just a minute. And I'm hoping that Mike will be able to join us. Don't forget to mute your mics as you come on. So Mike, I don't know if you're doing other things while you're doing this, or if you can
Yep.
tell
No,
your
I
story.
I was now unable to talk and unhide people at the same time. That I was trying to do, and I hid people at the same time. So that did happen in real time. But no, we are here now and happy to talk. And thank you, Elizabeth, for kicking off the conversation and the idea. And I remember you bringing it up about like a week and a half ago when we were talking about potential topics. And I thought it was such a great idea. And I mentioned how I had a hat that has a story that connects back to where I am today. And of course, everybody was like, "Well, are you wearing the hat?" I was like, "Well, of course I'm not, because this would be the perfect time not to wear it." But today I did wear this hat, which has a lot of value to me in a lot of different ways, which I'll talk about with this topic. And it was the year 1994. And I'll just say this: I was born in '83, so I was 11 years old at the time. And it drew me into what I wanted my career to be. Now, I'm not exactly doing that career, but it has connected the dots to where I am now. And without it, it would not have happened. The year was 1994, and I was in Salt Lake City, Utah for the NBA All-Star game. And for before the game on like the Saturday, they have all these festivities for fans. And then one of the festivities that they had, which was really cool, was you went into this booth and you got to record yourself on a VHS tape calling play by play from one of the games, from an NBA game. So it was a game that had Michael Jordan's famous shot against the Cleveland Cavaliers, which he hit over Craig Elo, I believe it was 1988. And I sat there and I did this and I was like, wow, even if it's an 11-year-old, I remember this being like, this is something you get to do all the time for fun. You get to go to sports games and call these games. And from there, I just fell in love with play by play, with sports, and my passion there came out so strong. And today in production and doing all different things, it's still that main storytelling of getting to express myself, which I love, which I found from that day. So I know it's a little different than it was, but I bring that up because Elizabeth, you had mentioned, was there like something that whispers to you? And literally, this hat on my head I got from, and I'll turn it around now. But this is the 1994, and it reminded me of it. 1994. This was bought in Utah. NBA All Star Game hat. When we moved, I found it and I started wearing it. Now, people are going to give me a lot of crap for this, and I get this because there's autographs on this hat. And I had this hat signed, but I've gotten to the point where I'm like, I get more joy out of it on my head, even if it's might be losing value in real time. I'm just like, just gonna sit somewhere. I'd rather just wear this hat, and it's a great story. It's topic for stories, but it's got Julius Irving and Carl Malone have signed this hat, and it is just sitting here, and it's a reminder to me, like for my passion for sports, my passion for storytelling, and my passion for production. So this hat is definitely a childhood clue that I found in a box that I have from 1994 that I now wear. Basically, a lot of the time because I definitely need a haircut right now. So the hat's been on my head. So thank you, Elizabeth, for bringing up the topic, and that's the story I wanted to share.
That's so fun, and I love that you have like a piece of the memorabilia
Hmm.
part of it too. And so even having that object that is a representation or a symbol of it, I think is a great way. And to think about what can you create for days to come, because
Hmm.
I don't think that anyone in and around you knew that that was going to be a pivotal moment,
Right.
because you never know. And you think about, I know many of you have children that listen, and you don't know what memory is a core memory that's happening in the
Right.
moment, that might shape who they are, what they're after. So anyway, I just love that. I love that you brought
Yeah.
that
No.
hat to us.
Awesome.
So, uh, G, I'd love to, if you could unmute and tell us maybe one of your stories about something specific, childhood memory, where you were doing something that hinted at what you're doing today.
Sure. Yes. Thank you. I kind of have two things. One is more in a professional uh, capacity, and the other one is more of a human fatherly capacity. Um, from the professional side, in a way, the arts called me from where I was really, really little, and they were different hints of that throughout my early years. My first art show at my kindergarten was when I was 5 years old. When I was seven, I decided to make a camera out of cardboard and pass it around. And the whole thing was that you would take a photo of one of your classmates, and the photo would come out naked. So it was a mix of photography and AI and creation and invention and all of that. So that was pretty funny, and people somehow still remember that story, and it's told back to me often. So that's on the career side. I'm a creative director, artist, all of that now. So it remained with me all these years. The other one is a bit harsher in a way, or sadder maybe. But when I was 9 years old, for the first time, I beat my dad at tennis. And that did not sit normal in my head, and told me that I needed to take care of myself and my body, and try to stay fit for my kids and for all the rest of the generation. And kind of your body as a temple will take you through this life. So that also became quite a bit a part of my existence and my way of living. That's the story.
Wow. I have a lot of questions. The cardboard camera, were you drawing the pictures to put back
Yes,
in there, or
yes, it was like stick figures with like wee wees and boobies.
oh my god.
I hope you're not using it on this call.
You should have asked me before, man. I already logged it. It's like, yeah, that's it. The photo is out there in the internet.
So now I'm going to separate from that conversation for a second. But you were talking about doing an art show as a 5-year-old, and what do you do now? Like
Well,
how yeah.
so you guys here know me more from the kids menu side, but I have a creative agency called cakedidit.com, and I'm the owner, creative director. I'm a designer. I'm an inventor. So yeah, that remained to be the case, and I knew I was gonna do something with arts all my life. I declared it early on to my mom that I was going to be in the arts or some kind of artist. And as I grew and I understood that money also plays a part in life, it became more of a graphic design and commercializable thing than just fine arts.
No, that makes so much sense. And so I'm really glad that you shared that, because that thread that goes between is that thinking outside of the box and experimenting, and then how can you do that for your clients now? And so I love that there's this beautiful mashup of things from your past that are showing up now. Thank you so much, G, for sharing today. We really appreciate it.
Cheers.
Hildy, are you
Yeah.
in a good spot? It looks like you might have parked. Hildy, can you unmute? Maybe not. Okay. I don't even know if she can hear me right now. Okay, cool. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today. I would love to hear if you have anything that is a thread through your past into, the days
Yeah, sure.
now. Yeah.
A lot I could share, but I was thinking and listening to all your stories. I think one that when I was 7 years old, my dad, I don't know what happened, but somehow he's like, "Why don't you come work for me for the summer?" I think because it's trying to give my mom a break since there was 4 of us little kids at home, and I'm the oldest. And it was cool. I got to hang out with my dad, and I'd go to work with him. And at the time, he worked in a business we had called Shamrock Seafoods, which was, to me, it was just this giant sort of warehouse play place, right? It was a bunch of freezers and refrigerators and mechanical forklifts and all kinds of cool devices. But it wasn't fun that summer because it was like, you're going to come to work for me and I'm going to give you $1 an hour. And it was 1976, probably 77, I guess. It must have been 77. And shoveling ice and putting, at the time, I guess we must have been selling wholesale to other fish markets and restaurants. So you're taking red snapper out of not frozen, but freezing cold, fresh red snapper with your bare hands out of one container and into another and weighing it and packing it ice and shipping it off in boxes. And same with calamari. And it was disgusting. And it was freezing cold. And we were also smoking. We used to do a lot of smoked seafood. And that's really, it was a huge moneymaker for us. We sold it to companies like Starkist, actually tuna, would buy it from us because they were out of San Pedro. And so you would come home with this smell of raw fish and smoked fish sort of combined. It was disgusting, right? But I had $7 a day. It was a lot for the ice cream man when you're a little kid. So, but what I learned during that is I took age 8, 9, 10 off. But age 11, we had, and I learned a lot. I was like, well, I don't like this stinky business. I don't like this work. I don't like being miserable. There's got to be something better. And what I would notice over the time that passed is, so age 11 rolls around and we open what became San Pedro Fish Market, which was the bigger legacy of our family business because we'd gotten evicted at the time in the late 70s and we're working out of a parking lot just like we are now. And we had to rebuild the entire business just like we're doing now. It was like, it's like deja vu all over again for us. And so when we were about to open, my mom got sick. She had issues with her gallbladder, which at the time, like now it's like outpatient surgery, but at the time it was like, the nurses are telling her, kiss your children goodbye. We don't know how this is going to go. So myself and my next brother down, I'm the oldest of 4, right? We had to start going to work with my dad because the business just opened. You know, it was like Good Friday in 1982, and she's in the hospital. My youngest two siblings would go to my grandma's house, and you know, we're getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go with him. And now we're not in the facility that's cooking and packaging food. We're now in the actual fish market, unpacking it and putting it in the showcases and selling it and learning how to run the business. And it's the first time we'd ever had a restaurant. So it was like go in the restaurant in the morning and wipe the tables down and set up all the stuff to get ready for customers coming in. And then I spent the entire day scaling and gutting fish for customers. So again, I'm covered in blood and guts. It's terrible. And I remember in each of these instances when I thought life cannot be more miserable than this because my friends are all out having a good time, that my dad and his uncle would like find those moments to come and go, remember this when you don't want to go to college. Remember this when you don't, you know, when you think this is what you want to do the rest of your life. But I don't have to be sold. I'm going, you know, I'm fine. I got the good grades, went to school, did other things. But it was like one of the things that showed up fast forwarding into my 30s, I had gone and I worked in insurance, I worked in banking, I did different things, and I keep coming back because I'm like, it sucks. This whole cubicle job thing is crap. Like, I mean, I thought it was bad smelling like fish and being covered in blood, but watching people die out of stress in my office and going out on a gurney is a whole nother level of what I don't want my life to be like. And so I, at one point, I came back to work. My dad, I think at this point, my dad had passed away. And so it was kind of this big eye opener for me. It was like, okay, well, he didn't want me here and I'm back. I did go to school and try other things, but I kind of wanted to honor the legacy of what he had built for us, but I also didn't want to let him down. So I left and I opened my own restaurant for a while, which was a complete disaster, by the way. It was like borderline bankruptcy, lost everything. It was terrible. And we had our third child at the time. I'm married now. My wife's sick at home. It was like everything that could go wrong, went wrong. And what I noticed in this situation, like reflecting all the way back to my being 7, was how I didn't understand what it's like to be the business owner. Like as an employee and all the different jobs I had, from banking, insurance, I worked in a yogurt store, I worked in a video rental store. For those of you that don't know, those were like, you know, little plastic discs with movies on. And it was like, it was always a job, right? You showed up and I was like, okay, it's almost done. I can go out and play. You know, like I thought when I was 7. And when I had my own business, I wanted to have these conversations with people that worked for me. And what I realized was they were me in my prior life, right? They didn't care about how I was going to make payroll. They just wanted to make sure I got paid. They didn't care if the vendors got paid. They just wanted to make sure they got paid, you know? And I was like, I felt so alone. And I could appreciate, like, as much as it was difficult working with my family, they had each other as partners. They might not have always gotten along, but they could have those conversations about business ownership with one another and help one another out, even if they didn't agree, and even if they, you know, was dysfunctional in a way, they weren't alone. And I don't know that anyone in my family had ever experienced what I was going through, owning this little failing restaurant where I worked 100 hours a week, probably put on 60 pounds, and also didn't have like any money. I didn't get paid for like a year and a half. Like I was trying to pay everybody else. So after all that ended, and I ultimately went back to work for my family and found myself in the role I'm in now, which is, you know, CEO visionary of the company. Like all of those experiences, as miserable as they were, the banking, the insurance, the video store, the owning my own restaurant, actually produced and created a background for me that I was very unique. Plus the education, like I'm still essentially like a student of school. I study business philosophy. I participate in a lot of conferences, and what that showed me was the education and the experience and the network of people that you surrounded around, whether they're successful or not. Really, it produced a pathway for me that I didn't appreciate till when I came back to work for the family. My aunt, who was our CFO and was really kind of rooting for me through all these disasters, she passed away. She had pancreatic cancer. It was gone very quickly, like 6 weeks. Nobody knew what to do. And I wasn't planning to stay. I was actually going to move on. And they're like, listen, you're the only one that's gone to school and had all these other experiences. Can you help us? And like sitting down and trying to figure out what she was doing, I'm like, oh, this is an insurance issue. Well, I worked at an insurance company. Oh, this is a banking issue. Oh, I had a job at a bank. Oh, this is this. And I had my own restaurant, and all those experiences really led me to a path that I was able to fill a void in the company that wouldn't have been fillable otherwise. No one else would have known what to do because they were operating the business. They were doing a great job operating it, but they didn't understand a lot of the outside concerns around finance, around marketing, around you name it, HR. Like I had to deal with all those things in my failures, and so I was able to step into something, and that all those experiences starting at age 7 up forward opened the door for me to be able to help us stay open during the next eviction parking lot rebuild situation. So that's my story.
Wow, Michael. And I do love that you took your gap years at 8, 9, and 10 years old.
I'd like to take them again.
Exactly. And so that one was making me laugh, but I loved the thread. It's something that I firmly believe is that no training is wasted. No skill is wasted, because for several reasons. One, it tells you what you may not want to do, but it also helps you. These skills can be reimagined for how you're using them now. So you learned you didn't necessarily want to be in the stinky fish part of it, like being elbow deep and all of these things, but then that loop out made it possible that when you stepped back in, you could reimagine, with the Amazon show, with the other things that you guys are doing, the multiple locations, and even trying to get creative with the limitations of what the city has put on you, and all of these things. And so I do think it's really fascinating to do that. And one thing you were talking about with you didn't understand what it was like to be the one in charge, to be the one carrying the weight of everything. And that's something that my husband and I have stepped into in his new position, and realizing the risk that it takes to be brave enough to experiment or try something new or to do it, and realizing that it's not just you, but it's the weight of other people's lives that you're carrying in the middle of that.
It's a lot.
So,
Eric says it's going to make a great book for me.
Yeah, I definitely.
Absolutely true, sir. You need to do it.
I love that. And your ice cream money for $7 a day. Anyway, that's incredible. That's a lot of ice cream at that point in time, isn't it? No,
we were big. The Angaro boys were pretty heavy.
But I love that very, very much. Well, so thank you so much for sharing your story with us. We really, really appreciate it. And guys, make sure that you check out Kings of Fish on Amazon. It's a fascinating behind the scenes, and it's a great way to think about storytelling and how you can manifest something like that. So please definitely check it out. Yes. I want to welcome Richard Liverman to the couch. Do I have a couch? No, I don't have a couch. Richard, I'd love to hear your story about maybe some hints you had as a child.
Well, I don't know where to start with this. I think this topic's great, and I've really enjoyed hearing other people's stories. And I think back to my childhood, a lot of it was spent around flowers and plants. And I think it's interesting, Michael was saying about being around fish. I was around horticulture. My parents sold cut flowers. My grandparents grew cut flowers, and I have another uncle and aunt who grow plants. And my aunt's quite famous in the UK for her skills. And I kind of grew up around plants, and I really liked it. But it also told me what I didn't want to do. And the bit I really enjoyed was going out with my dad selling, or going out with my uncle Rob, who I know some of the Cali barbecue team will know Cameron, but I worked with Cameron's father, going all around the UK, going to different exhibitions and shows and selling. And I used to love working with Rob and learning about how to talk to people, learning how to sell a product. Even if you don't fully understand it, you need to understand it, and you need to be able to tell stories. I loved it, and it kind of got in the blood. And that kind of, it did two things. One is I went, I really like gardening, although if you saw my garden, it's like a graveyard for plants, which, I'm really pleased my late mum can't see it. She'd be appalled. But there were some nice ones in there. I like gardening. I like flowers. I like plants, but I didn't want it. It's in my DNA, but I didn't want it. What I really loved was talking to people and having adventures. And then I think on the flip side, something similar to what G was saying, when you've got that eccentric member of your family, and please don't look at me, Elizabeth, because I'm not that person. I had a great uncle I had a great uncle, and when I was a kid, he would come to our house about 3 times a year and do a slideshow. Slideshow, you know, when Michael was talking about videos, slides like these little things that you put in front of light and it would project an image. It was amazing. And great Uncle John would come to our house and do a slideshow of his travels. Now, he was in his 70s and 80s, and he would travel all around India and the Far East, and he would do it on $6 a day. And then when he hit 75, he increased it to $10 a day. You know, he would go from sitting on top of the train to sitting inside the train. And it was really funny because at his funeral, I met somebody my age or just slightly older than me who'd been backpacking with it. So he used to go backpacking. It was insane. And what I loved was all the stories he would tell about these far off places. And I remember one year at Christmas, I was given a book token. Boring. And I went to the book token shop. This is as a kid. Now I like books now. Just want to add that. But as a kid, you're like, oh. And I took the book token. I bought a globe. I bought this globe, and I used to spin the globe, and I'd stop it and go, I'm going to go there. I'm going to go there. I'm going to go there. I'm going to go explore. And I think what's really nice is in my office now, I've got a map of the world. I've got it right here, and I'll pin a link to the artist that made it. And that map's there to inspire me to go and see the world, go and see kind of strange, exotic places in South Carolina. And there's that little bit where that kind of passion that I'm really grateful for the eccentric uncle. Most people would have thought a 78-year-old doing a slideshow about his holiday would be boring. For me, it was like this adventure around the world. And I think what it's done is it's really kind of inspired me to, you know, have that curiosity about people and places. And I remember being at the airport in Hong Kong once and being like, why does KFC sell rice? Or like being in Tennessee and having barbecue food and, you know, all those little adventures. Why is chicken in Singapore so spicy? And you kind of, all of those kind of adventures, it just broadens your mind. And then you bring that thinking into what you do. And I thought it was really interesting when you're talking about threads. And I see the thread of like what an impact Rob had on me in terms of like selling and talking to people. And I think about that thread of horticulture. Yeah, I love plants and flowers, but I don't want to do it, but I love it. And then I think about that eccentric uncle. And I still remember his funeral. And this woman coming up to us, being like, I used to travel with your uncle. And he was like, we were all in our like late teens. And he was in his 70s and he'd drink us all under the table. I'm like, great Uncle John, you never told us these stories. And it was like, it was brilliant. And I think there's that little bit where that whole idea, Shawn talks about a lot about curiosity, but for me, I think it's adventures. I like adventures. And an adventure for me could be as simple as I went 10 miles from my house today to see somebody who I really like and admire. And tomorrow I'm going to London, and that's an adventure. An adventure could be like heading back to the States. But for me, it's about collecting adventures and bringing that into your thinking. So to my eccentric great uncle, thank you. To my family for talking me out of horticulture, thank you. And to my uncle who taught me to talk to people, thank you. Because they're the threads that have really built my DNA, both me as a person, but also my business. And I love it. Absolutely love it.
That's incredible. I love, and I do have a couple questions too, but I love how in all of these things, other people might think they're boring, but you found the adventure in the middle of it. And yet part of what you do is say, don't be boring when you're working with your clients.
All the time.
And what I love that you do is that you climb into the businesses and the brands that you work with, and you're trying to get to reveal the adventure rather than it just being the static whatever. It's not just the projection of the slideshow on the wall. It's tell me the stories that behind those things inspire
absolutely.
Me. Mm-hmm.
And I think if you look at a boring business on their About Us, they'll tell you all about them. And like, it's like this kind of, it's just a bit dull. But for me, the really exciting bit It's like, why is that relevant? How is that relevant? Because I think in everybody there's a story and an adventure. And I think it's often not just how you tell it, but, you know, there's glimmers in everybody of an exciting story, of something really interesting, that sometimes people forget to see it. And that was the thing about the sideshow. In that sideshow, and it was a Sunday evening, and there was literally, we get like an old mattress cover so it could be projected onto it. It was so exciting. And I think it's the same way. I've worked with businesses that on paper, you'd be like, they're a bit boring, but there's beauty in them. Just sometimes people can't see that beauty, or people can't see the interesting bits. And Gio'll understand this as a creative person. Sometimes you look at a brand and actually it's those little nuggets, those little stories that you can bring to life. And all of a sudden it's like, this is amazing. But we don't see that. And I think in everybody there's an amazing story, but sometimes we fail to look for it. And I think there's that bit where if you walk around long enough, you can find beauty in anything, you know, even Cleveland. I mean, you have to work really hard for that, but there is beauty in there.
Indeed.
I think that, sorry, could I say something really quick? Like, I think that a bit of the learning to this, even now, is walking to rooms knowing that there's a story there. Walking to rooms knowing that there's a story that you come out and that there are those nuggets hidden in that room, as opposed to whatever the opposite, or trying to see if there is a story. No, there is a story. Work, walk enough that room, talk enough with people, connect enough to get that story out. I think having that mindset that it's a mix of curiosity and adventure, it's really great.
I couldn't
I
agree
love
more.
that. I love that. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that we've all got it. We just sometimes lose sight of it, or we're too busy telling people what we do. We don't tell people why we do it. Or there's that little bit where, and I've nagged Elizabeth on this, and I'm going to try and make her redder than the Cracker Barrel incident. But there's that little bit where Elizabeth thinks that what she does is ordinary. It's not, it's extraordinary. And I think there's that little bit where we all have these stories, and our stories we think are ordinary. Like, Michael's had an Amazon show. I mean, come on. And there's Mike there with the mailman signature on his cap. That's insane. And it's like we all have these stories, yet to us they feel ordinary, but to the rest of the world they're extraordinary. And I think there's that little bit. Sometimes what's normal to us is not normal to other people. And I think that's where there's almost that joy. And that's what I learned with my uncle, my great uncle John. You know, everybody else would have seen that as ordinary. I saw it as extraordinary. And I think it's the same when, you know, we tell our stories. What's ordinary to us is, you know, truly extraordinary to everybody else. We just don't sometimes see it.
Exactly. And I had and before we go to Eric, I did have one more follow-up question for you, Richard. Because you were talking about the exhibitions that you went to, the flower shows that you went to. And I've seen a couple pictures from some of them, and I know that they can be fairly elaborate. And I'm just curious about the exposure to those kinds of exhibitions of these massive displays and these other things, and how it translated into your marketing career with some of the presentations and experiences that you were creating for people on a larger scale.
No, completely. And I love creativity. I think there's something beautiful in creativity. I love design. And I ended up working in marketing for a very large food retailer. And the bit I ended up and loved was being in the design team. And then I worked for a design agency. And there was this brilliant moment where I took our creative director like motorbikes. So he took me to like this motorbike show, into this motorbike race, and I'm there like, but it was very impressive. Like I was fascinated to see like how good these people were. I took him to the Chelsea Flower Show, which is like the world's most prestigious flower competition. And I took him to meet my auntie, who does the displays. And there were these two creative people talking about color, talking about design. And there was a beautiful moment. I don't know if you've heard of the designer Paul Smith. He's an incredible designer who does like lots and lots of colors. I'll put the link in the chat. He's a remarkable British designer. And when you see his signature stripes, you'll see what I mean. And he was at one of the flower shows and came up to my auntie and an uncle and said, "Look, can I work with you? Like no cameras or anything like that." And he wanted to understand how she put colors together. And he did sort of half a day work for them, and like, she's a very strong woman. She's like, "Well, you need to wear a high visibility jacket and safety boots because this is a working site." And this is like a designer. This is like a top designer. Anyway, they took them back to the studio. In exchange, he took them back to the studio where he designs all the clothes. And there's this exchange of ideas and thinking. But for me, there's something about where I've learned about how colors can work together, but just seeing how things like heights and all of these different things about putting a display on. And I've always enjoyed visual merchandising, but there's also that bit where, how do you get creativity over? How can you show people what's possible? And when you actually look at design, so much of design is showing people who might not have your visual understanding what it might look like. Because some people are very creative, and you might see, as Michael talks about his marquee restaurant in the car park, I've almost got a vision of it. There'll be other people that won't have it. And that's where design can bring that to life, in the same way of those displays, and seeing how those displays were built. Not only did it teach you the technicals, but it also showed me, okay, you don't have to show somebody, like, people don't understand what a finished garden might look like, but here's one. Here's one that we created in 2 days. And this is what you could have. And I think there's that little bit where all of those lessons from doing those shows all around the country, you learn how things are put together, but you also learn how people think and talk. And then you sort of bring that into your everyday life. And for me, what's really interesting is often how you take an experience from a totally different industry and bring it into another one. So what does flowers and horticulture have with creativity and design on paper? Nothing. But for me, it's heavily influenced my thinking, my creativity, and the way I think about things. And that's almost where you look at shapes and beauty. And it's one of those things where, if I'm in New York, there's nothing better than staring at the Chrysler Building or the Empire State and looking at beautiful Art Deco and thinking about, okay, how do you bring that kind of design philosophy into, I don't know, into a brand or into a business? And you start taking ideas from one field and bringing it into another. And all of these DNA strands came from my childhood. And I think it's also reflected in everybody else's stories today. It's such a great topic, Elizabeth. Well done.
Awesome. And thank you so much for sharing that with us. I'm excited to look into Paul Smith. Eric, I wanted to welcome you to the stage. Feel free to share with us either a childhood memory or a hobby or something that gives us a hint of what you're doing today.
Sorry, I had to find the unmute button there. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. I finally found this picture. It's a picture of a picture, but we'll see if it shows up. Yeah, I guess you can see that. That is me at about 2 years old, sitting on my grandmother's kitchen counter, eating something. That is one of my favorite pictures. Like, that is the memory, because I was always in the kitchen. I was in somebody's kitchen. If it wasn't our kitchen at home, it was my grandparents. My grandma was always cooking. When Julia Child was still on TV, I was watching reruns of that when I was little. I have lived on cooking shows my whole life. The fact that I didn't go to culinary school doesn't really make sense, but here we are. But if it wasn't there, I was really good friends with my neighbors who were older than my parents, and they treated me like their first grandkid until their first grandson was born when I was 7. I was over there all the time. And when I was really little, I mean like 2, 3, 4, I would ask to be put up on their kitchen counter, and I would open their spice cabinet, and I would go through every one of those herbs and spices and just explore them, just smell them and try to figure out, this smells good, that doesn't. What in the world is that thing? What is this word I can't pronounce? I wanted to know all of those things. And it baffled me that this stack of weird powders is what grown-ups make good flavor with. And, every crazy foodie has that one food that changed their world, where they go from chicken nuggets are food to, oh my God, food is amazing. There's something to explore. There's magic in this. For Anthony Bourdain, it was his first raw oyster. For me, it was anchovies on a Caesar salad at the Eagle's Nest restaurant, one of those big fancy spinning restaurants at the top of a hotel. Wait a minute, there's fish on a salad? I couldn't have been more than 4 or 5, and that was it. I was done. Like, I have to explore every single food in the world from now on. So how did I get from food obsession and wanting to explore everything and try everything all the time? I mean, 8 years old, second grade, they give you that piece of paper the first day of class, and they say, write down little things about you. What are your favorite sports? What are your favorite foods? A friend of mine wrote fried chicken. That was kind of predictable, let me tell you. I think I put Caesar salad, shrimp scampi, and buffalo wings. Okay, well, that's a good start. Anyway, how did we get to now I'm writing about it? Because there's got to be a segue in there somewhere, right? Well, I was always creating stuff, inventing things when I was a kid. I wanted to know how everything worked, and I was very irritated that there were commercials on TV selling me toys, and it worked. And in between cartoons, there were commercials about toys I wanted and cereal boxes I wanted, and what is this stuff? And I asked my dad one day, how does this work? How do they come up with these ideas? How do they decide, how they're going to shoot these videos and what's going to be in it, and how do they script this? How does the whole thing work? And he sat me down and explained marketing to me. And he said, yeah, at the end of the day, there are a bunch of suits in a room and they make a bunch of decisions. And then another group of people go make this thing. And there's a ton of money to be made in deciding how to sell people stuff. You should go do it. And then I didn't. But I did get through school with a penchant for writing. I loved crafting words. I had a big vocabulary even when I was a kid. And I knew there was something in storytelling. There was some power in the ability to write. The world is made of books and stories, and they got to go together somewhere. So I didn't do anything with it. Still, I just kept going with, I'm not doing anything with this. This thing is sitting in the back of my head. Like, there's a talent there. There's an interest there. Should have done something with it. In college, I had a creative writing professor try to kick me out of school real bad. He said, your writing is way too good to be in this janky little town. You please leave this school. Please go do something better with your life. And I was like, what are you talking about, man? Just give me the A and move on. And then, the next semester I go back and I walked right past him and he said, Mr. Farrell, why are you here? I thought I told you to go somewhere else. You need to take that writing skill somewhere. And I didn't do it. And then I followed the traditional path that I didn't want to do. And I got the corporate job that I didn't want to do. When I was 6 years old, my first grade teacher told my parents, you better get him into entrepreneurship or at least management, because he's not going to be good at anything else. He's got to run his own show. And I never did it. And the corporate job didn't want me anymore. And I took the back burner idea. I said, okay, let's try it. Let's try to make it work. I'm going to go write stuff. Oh God, I got to pick a niche. What am I going to write for? I got to pick an industry. And it was really the pushing of my brilliant wife that got me to, if you don't write for food, you're an absolute idiot. Just go do it. Go write for food people. You have to. Come to find out, there aren't that many people doing this. And the more I get into it, the more I talk to people about it, the more I find there are more nuggets in this hospitality industry thing that I really like. And I can use all of these squirrely passions in me, everything from technology to my music degree to the food and writing skill. It's useful for somebody. It's in here for a reason, and I haven't used it for 39 years. Why? But rewinding it all back to that food obsession. And then that grew into, I want to know how words work. Why are words powerful? And the food world needs that too. And I can have fun while I do it. That's crazy. So yeah, here we are.
Yeah.
And the technology part plays a role in this too. I listened to, I guess, a webinar discussion, something this morning about technology for health and wellness in hotels, like luxury hotels where you can spend $45,000 for gene therapy on your vacation. And there's so much to explore. And I had all of this sitting in the back of my head this whole time. So here I am, and I'm doing my best to run with it, and we're going to have fun while we do it.
That's incredible. Well, thank you so much for sharing. And I do hear in that the opening the spices and smelling all of them, this idea of exploration and trying to pull from many different sources and create a recipe, even in the writing that you're doing, because you're trying to pull the flavor out of people and craft that. So that's absolutely incredible. So guys, we actually do have we do have a hard stop today, and so we still want to go back and do our tip takeaway homework assignment side of things. So if we could do a quick round of that in just a minute, but I did want to invite everybody this Friday. Our conversation, Shawn will be back from Miami. He had an amazing share at this conference yesterday with Deuce Raymond, who is is it Raymond? I think, what was it? Okay. Oh, I thought you were unmuting, Mike. Maybe not.
No,
but
no, you go for it.
So he does the catering and has helped. His family does Sweet Baby Ray's, and they did this awesome tandem thing. It's actually on Shawn's YouTube channel. You should check it out, where they had this conversation about being the show and not the commercial, specifically for people in the catering industry, which is a really fascinating conversation. So go check that out on his YouTube channel. But so Friday, it will be that conversation. So as we do our tip takeaway homework assignment, feel free to share anything there. If you can't think of something to share, I would love to hear, what is an activity you did as a kid that you completely could lose yourself in, if you don't have another takeaway to share. So I'm going to start with Mike. If you'd give us your takeaway today.
Yeah, takeaway, just loved hearing everybody's story, especially from their childhood. And when Michael was speaking earlier, and you were talking about being 7 and everything going to your father's business. My son's 4 years old, and just yesterday he has this like fake kind of like Fisher Pricey computer. And then he has horrible eczema. So we have this like cream that comes out, and he put the cream that has a pump next to the computer, and he pretended it was a microphone, and he started talking into it with his fake computer next to him, and was pretending to be me. And I was just like, wow, I guess you're watching me every day. So that just reminded me of that. Thank you for sharing that, because it got my brain to go there. I was just like, all right, I guess he does pick up on things I'm doing every day. Be careful. So it was a cool moment.
That's awesome. Michael, do you want to respond and give us your takeaway?
Yeah, well, I would say now that my kids are all in their 20s, what they pick up on. Like they told me the other day, they've been keeping notes of things I've said. Like they have a notebook of it. I didn't know. Like, remember that time, Dad, we asked if you wanted to watch Mamma Mia, and you said, yeah, sure. Well, let me just climb up to the roof and jump off. I don't remember saying that, but I didn't want to watch it. I knew that. But they just lost it. Like, that was one of the funniest things you said, like threatening my suicide over a movie. Okay. So, yeah, be careful what you say. Takeaway, I had one. Sorry. What I was thinking about is, I think it was what Richard said, was that we take for granted that our own stories are common, like they're not. And then the more that we share them, I'm always amazed at how I'm like sitting here going, I might probably talk too much. And then I find out after every time, it's like, man, there was more there. Tell us more. And I'm like, okay, well, I can. So I think we all kind of take for granted that there's a certain value to the stories we hold, and how they can be impactful for other people. And a lot of times we just don't even want to share them. So I love having the forum to do that here. So thank you all for participating and opening that for us. Thanks. That's it.
It's incredible. Thank you so much, Michael. G, feel free to go ahead. Do you want to unmute? Oh, there
yeah.
We can hear you.
I guess we are now the kids of the older selves will be in 10, 20 years, which means that we are still building stories today. We are still creating things that impact who we are and how our lives will be shaped. So as we were talking a little bit ago about entering rooms, knowing that there's a story, it's almost like live every day like it's gonna leave a story, and try to at the end of the day shut down somewhere that in the memory or in the DNA strand what the story of that day was. So that's what I'm living with.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, G. Eric, over to you.
I'll keep it short because I think I did talk too long. I would just say explore everything, try everything, be as creative as you can, because even if you do exactly the same thing someone else does, there is no one else in the world that is you. Your story is unique, and what got you to where you are, no one else in the whole world has experienced. So share the story and use it all.
Awesome. Richard.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the conversation. Eric, your story about the herbs and spice just amused me and just, brought back lots of nice memories. And I'm Michael, I normally pitch coming to the UK, but I don't want to put you off by this. But I went to a gig just before Christmas, and they've in the venue they've recreated the cafe from Mamma Mia, and you sort of walk past it, and there are hundreds of people singing. And I was like, I mean, the whole idea of don't be boring, that's somebody else's interest and it's just not mine. But look, there are great places in London. I won't take you to that one.
Okay,
But Mamma
thank you.
Mia, the cafe exists. It's
I-
kind of...
If I'm there with my 3 daughters, I probably won't have a choice but have to go after my
I'll tell you what,
comment.
we'll go next door. Seriously, we'll do go watch a gig or go bowling or something. But I will take you somewhere better, I promise. Don't let that put you off coming to London.
Okay.
I'll send you a link to it, and then you can put it on, block it from your whole family's website.
So great.
I went
Thank you.
to see a TED talk a few weeks ago with Scott Turner of this parish, and the first speaker was this incredible guy who is on one of the roughest parts of London and publishes stories. And he put up this sign saying no ball games. And there's this little bit where, Elizabeth, we've all talked today about our childhood and how play made us who we are today. So my takeaway is don't stop playing, because play took us, it's in all our DNA strands. And what's so interesting is so much of education kicks creativity and play out of you. Yet if you look at the really great companies, they're the ones that encourage play. If you look at the great kitchens where the great food comes out, that's where the chefs have been encouraged to play. So never lose that ability to play, because it's made us all who we are.
That's so great. And actually, there was an article in CNN Health this last weekend, just 3 days ago, that they published about the importance and the trend that people are doing and starting to play again. It's a great article. I dropped it in the comments on the event post on LinkedIn if you want to check out the article. It's amazing. So, my homework assignment for you all is, if you told a story on the stage today, or it sparked a story of your childhood, please go tell that story online in one way or another, whether you write it out, you jump on camera, go live, or you film yourself doing that, or you have a picture like Eric did, throw that picture up and tell us the story behind that. That is your homework assignment, and to be able to do this. So thank you all for joining us on Digital Hospitality. We're excited Shawn will be joining us back on Friday, and we will see you then. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
Awesome. That was great, Elizabeth.